Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders Offbeat.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Yes, you are, Dylan. Always giving it 100%.
Well, I'd like to think it's 110%, but I mean, whatever. It's all about...
Who's counting?
It's all about perspective, right?
Yeah, sure. You doing okay on this Wednesday?
I'm doing incredibly well.
Incredibly well.
Yes, I'm on my long break. All my woes of the salt mines are lifting from my shoulder.
It's like Calgon. The stress is it's gone away. It's
yes.
melted in your bubble bath of life.
Yeah, what I like to do on my long break is imagine that I'm independently wealthy.
What you like to do on your long break is sleep the entire break.
Well, I mean, what would a rich playboy billionaire do besides exactly what they want to do, right?
You mean besides lay around sleeping, smoking every 5 minutes?
Well, that's called boredom, smoking.
Watching TikToks.
That does happen.
That's what you do on your long break.
Yes, because I'm contemplating buying the platform.
Well, what's really amazing is there's like a million things that could be done around the house and things that you've promised me you will do at some point, and yet those tasks it's like they vanish away with your woes from work.
Well, honey, I mean, again, I like to imagine myself independently wealthy in my long 8-day break because not most people don't have 8 days off in a row. And I don't know what to say. I mean, as a billionaire, my perspective is going to be completely different than yours.
I'm sorry. For some reason, Apple decided to let me know that Michael's was giving me a coupon.
Thanks, Apple.
Yeah, thanks so much for that.
Appreciate that. But yeah, so we're not going to view things the same during my 8-day break.
I suppose we're never going to view things the same.
But I would like to point out, since now you're clearly trying to assassinate my character on...
There's no trying to do that, Dylan. I don't have to try.
This public assassination of Dylan Packer's character. I did some chores when I got up because I was directed to by my wife.
Exactly. Well, you know what I've been doing? I've been making tater salad, which is a very southern thing to do, don't you think?
Tater salad on a Wednesday? Yeah.
Tater salad on a Wednesday. And also a peanut butter pie.
Ooh.
That's coming up next.
See, and I don't even have to worry about these, my favorite word, these machinations of normal life because it just appears for me.
It's amazing how that happens, right?
I'm a wealthy playboy billionaire during my 8-day break.
Who just lounges around smoking and waiting for a delicious peanut butter pie to appear.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got like 5 jars of peanut butter I need to get rid of.
Oh, wow, that's really very sensible.
Someone donated those to me, so a relative was like, here, take these 5 jars of peanut butter.
I got a backlog of peanut butter.
Yeah, I'm like, we don't really eat a lot of peanut butter in this house, so I need to bake with this or something.
That's what's great about visiting your relatives, no matter where you live, when they have surpluses, and they're like, here, take some of this before it goes bad.
Oh, it's true. Easter Sunday, went to visit my aunt. She made like a nice dinner, and she loaded me up with like a big box of stuff.
Yeah, it was like you've been to a food bank.
Like a huge bag of taters.
Yep.
And that's what I'm making my tater salad with, that bag of red taters.
There you go.
Because again, I'm like, what am I going to do with all these potatoes?
And so here we are on Offbeat, moving along away from the Asylum series, trying to venture into new territories.
We put a poll out on Instagram and asked folks what they wanted to hear on this episode, and they voted Appalachian Ghosts.
Oh, no.
I've also been promising our patrons an Appalachian Ghost episode for quite a while, and I've just been really lazy getting to that. But we have some great haunted Appalachian tales today.
So this is a good example for people. You're just like, help me find some, more stories, and I kept getting sidetracked. I think I have like ADHD very badly. Because
you think?
I set out with good intentions to do something.
You're just now realizing this.
And then the next thing you know, I'm over here talking about the petrodollar or some shit.
Yeah, you were watching some video on YouTube about like the history of the Appalachian Mountains and how they were formed. And I'm like, what does that have to do at all with paranormal ghosts, haunted Appalachia?
One of the oldest.
And you're like, well, nothing, but did you know this range was formed? And you're like telling me all the details.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world. And it's estimated to be over 4 million years old.
Well, maybe you could put together a historic Appalachian Mountains episode and let our listeners know the history, Dylan.
Yeah, maybe. And Davy Crockett got like the tribe chieftains of some of the Indian villages drunk to get them to sign some of the treaties. Go, Davy.
Really? That doesn't sound good.
No, that doesn't sound good. I didn't know Davy Crockett was such a shit.
Such a piece of shit. Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Oh
I just know that song that was popular like in the 50s. Davy Crockett.
Well, yeah, all that cowboy frontier culture was a very big thing for decades in this country. And that's why we have an abandoned ghost town in Maggie Valley.
Woohoo! Gunfighters.
All right, so before I take us down that rabbit hole and completely derail the episode, let's get started with your spooky stories.
Can't we just finish talking about the potato salad? As if I didn't derail the episode in the beginning? Okay. Haunted Appalachia. Our first ghostly tale comes from Independence, which is located in northern Kentucky. So there's a railroad bridge that runs over Cody Road, and according to local legend, a woman was either killed there during a flood or perhaps she committed suicide. Her spirit is often heard crying and calling out for help. Others describe her as the pig-faced woman, referring to her injuries after going head-to-head with a train.
Ooh, yeah,
That's
I don't
not
think
nice.
I don't think you would win that if you went head to head with a train.
Others report seeing a woman in white walking along the Cody Road Bridge. Orbs, phantom trains, and disembodied voices are often heard in the area. The railroad and bridge often flood, so the likelihood that someone died at this location is highly possible. During Prohibition, moonshiners would park on the road and cross the hills by the railroad tracks to make their liquor. So it's believed a lot of these ghost stories originated to keep people away from moonshine stills.
Oh, well, that's interesting, and that sounds plausible.
There was, in fact, a real story of two moonshiners who had a falling out. One of the men set fire to the other man's house. Reportedly, a family pet died, only a family pet. But stories began circulating about this Cody Bridge ghost being a woman who perished in the house fire. But the fact is, the woman supposedly lived a long life, dying in the 1980s at a ripe old age, but definitely not in a house fire.
Wow, so you got warring moonshiners, and it's a good idea to start some superstitious, creepy story about a certain area to keep people away.
I appreciated that detail when I was researching the Cody Ridge, Cody Road Bridge ghost, that it could have possibly just been a tale spun by some moonshiners to keep people the hell away from their white lightning.
You kids and that dog, you ain't ruining my good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Are you ready for our second ghost story?
Can I say that
Yes.
old...
You can say.
Oh.
Say it.
Oh, I think people can tell both our brains are firing in a specific way today. Don't you think?
Well, I also have ADD.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do. I mean, you should. Okay, just a side note, guys. You should watch us make major purchases like cars or like expensive electronics. You would just be like, what the fuck are these people doing? Anyway.
Are you saying we don't have any impulse control when it comes to buying things?
Absolutely not.
Okay, yeah, we really
Especially if it's something we need. Like we're just like all over the map. We need a chaperone.
We do.
Yeah. So anyway, railroad bridges, old railroad trestles, and things like that I always think they're creepy. No matter where I see them, if it's high noon or near dark, I always found them creepy.
Well, there is something haunting about them. I think just the historic aspect is that, most of these railroads, these tracks have been around for a very long time. And especially here in the mountains, there was so much hard work that went into building those, and many people did lose their lives working on the railroad tracks with the dynamite blasting, derailed trains, people dying. I mean, there was a lot of that kind of thing, especially back in the day. So maybe that's one reason why they seem so creepy. And then you have a lot of the tunnels actually going into the mountains, and that's very creepy.
Yes, and they were almost all of them developed with a long time ago with very old techniques and dangerous techniques.
So maybe that's one of the reasons why they seem so creepy.
Okay.
But through my research, it's funny that you mentioned that, Dylan. Through my research on some of the Appalachian ghosts, there are many, many, many ghost stories that take place on railroad bridges, on railroad tracks. There's a lot of railroad ghost stories.
Well, and I think that's for one, the age of these tracks in our area, and for I'd say for a long time, the tracks were more developed than the roadways. So that was the main way in and out of the area.
I probably found 7 or 8 ghost stories associated with a railroad or train tracks through my research on this particular episode. So there's many out there. Let's move on to our second story. It is about the Chateau La Roche, called Loveland Castle, that is now a museum located in Loveland, Ohio. It is a European folly-style castle. It was built in the 1920s by a man named Harry Andrews. He named the castle after a military hospital in France where he had spent some time during World War I. Andrews used stones from the Little Miami River to construct his castle. Andrews was also considered a medievalist, and he had a keen interest in knights and castles and anything relating to like medieval history.
Wow. Could you imagine being into that stuff and having the money to build your own castle? Who doesn't want to live in a castle?
Right? Well, he organized a Boy Scout type of troop that he called Knights of the Golden Trail with principles based on the Ten Commandments. Now, initially, his troops camped out on the land, but he decided to make a grand castle stand on the property because if he had these knights, they deserved to sleep in a castle. So the castle featured a high wall, a moat, and a dungeon.
Well, of course it's going to have a dungeon.
Harry lived on the grounds until he was 91 years old, eventually having a fire accident that left him hospitalized. He died a few weeks after that. He left the castle in the care of the knights, and now it's a museum run by volunteers. However, Harry's ghost allegedly still hangs around the castle. Volunteers have heard disembodied voices and have seen a woman in white lurking around the garden. So the woman in white is also something that comes up quite frequently.
Oh, in various stories?
In various ghost stories.
Okay.
Others have claimed to have actually seen men like dressed as medieval knights inside the castle and walking around the property.
Okay, that would be
like
weird.
Disappearing knight apparitions.
Just this fully armor-clad man.
Yes.
And he's just walking around, so there's just a knight kicking around.
Yes.
And then disappears.
How freaky would that be?
Oh, that would, again, I'm always kind of a skeptic. If that happened to me in person, I would be totally freaked out.
Well, in the castle, it is a museum now, and it does have a lot of medieval artifacts. There are suits of armor and that type of thing in the castle. So in my reading, some folks have speculated that perhaps it could have been ghosts attached to those particular, pieces of uniform, that kind of thing, that have come to America and are now haunting this castle. Because it's like haunted armor or something.
Oh, wow.
Like a haunted object. Which
So,
there's a lot of that out there.
In Ohio, the edge of the Appalachian Mountains, however you want to say it.
It's Appalachians.
There is a random castle.
A random castle.
Man, that's so cool.
It is cool, and it's open. You can go visit it. Next time we're in Ohio, we should plan to stop by.
Oh, we love Ohio. And we love people from Ohio.
We love Skyline chili.
Well, it's pretty good.
I do love Cincinnati chili.
It's different.
Yeah. Okay. Our next story takes place in Wilder, Kentucky. It's one of the most haunted places in the United States. And I'm talking about Bobby Mackey's Music World.
Now, this is a long time ago, quite a while ago, we went to the building. It seemed abandoned, right? And took some pictures. And I don't know, it's in a very old part down on the river, kind of there in Ohio, right?
Right on the border of Cincinnati.
In Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a crazy place.
Yeah, so right there between, northern Kentucky and that Ohio border. So Bobby Mackey's Music World has a long history and attracts ghost hunters far and wide. There have been books and television shows all about it. We're talking unsolved mysteries to ghost hunters, ghost adventurers, all those paranormal reality shows. Stop off at Bobby Mackey's. The site where Bobby Mackey sits was once a slaughterhouse built in the 1840s. Now, that's enough to be creepy on its own.
Okay, the way the building's designed has that lower section that you can pull. That makes sense that it was a slaughterhouse. When I hear something's been on Unsolved Mysteries, especially the old school ones, it gives it like some credibility in my book.
You think so?
I don't know why.
Okay. It was closed about 50 years later in the 1890s. So part of the slaughterhouse was consisted. I can't read my own typing here, guys. The slaughterhouse consisted of a drain that ran out to the Licking River where blood and other waste would make its way. Some call this area at the bottom of the building a well, but it was not a well as we think of a well. It was specifically used to discard animal waste. According to legend, after the slaughterhouse closed, a group of Satan worshippers used the building for a gathering place.
Ooh.
Now, if you listen to a previous Mountain Murders episode on the murder of Pearl Bryan, do you recall that episode?
Yes.
Way back in the beginning of our podcast, Dylan. We discussed Pearl's murder. Now, some people say Pearl Bryan was decapitated, which, I mean, that's a fact, she was, but that her head was left in the well of the slaughterhouse, and have speculated that her two killers were involved in the satanic cult.
Wow.
Now, eventually, the slaughterhouse was razed, and a road was built, through this area. Then in the 1920s, it became a speakeasy. It was a popular place to drink and gamble. Several people were killed at that time due to bar fights, all the things that go along with the illegal drinking and gambling.
Well, that happens with legal drinking.
It does. Let's see. Their bodies were often dumped elsewhere as to not draw attention to this illegal night spot. After Prohibition ended, a man bought the building and turned it into a tavern and casino he called the Primrose. Buck, the original owner of the Primrose, was muscled out by the local mafia.
Oh, wow.
There was some mafia in the area, and he eventually killed himself in 1965. So another nightclub was opened, this time called the Latin Quarter, and it would later be raided for illegal gaming operations. It was during this time in the 1950s that the most famous ghost began appearing. Her name was Joanna. She was the daughter of the owner who fell in love with a singer at the club. Her father had this singer shot, and Joanna was 5 months pregnant with his baby. So feeling that she didn't have any choice, she tried to kill her father and then kill herself with poison, but her father managed to survive the poisoning. She did not. Joanna and her lover are said to haunt the building.
Man, who shoots the baby daddy of their daughter just because they don't think that's the person they should be with?
It's it just makes me think of a Barry Manilow song.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Her name was Joanna. She wasn't a showgirl, but her father owned a club, and she loved the singer.
Is that how the song goes?
No, I just made it up.
Oh. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with any Barry Manilow songs.
You're not a Manilow. I'm sorry for you. In 1978, Bobby Mackey and his wife bought the nightclub. This is when paranormal activity began ramping up. Bobby's wife, Janet, claims to have been attacked by unseen forces and physically assaulted. The jukebox would play without being plugged in. A rose-scented perfume often would fill the room when there was no one there.
Ooh.
Which is strange. Evil faces have been seen in the basement area. Carl Lawson was a caretaker at Bobby Mackey's, and he lived in an apartment over the bar. Carl had worked at this bar since it was the Primrose, so he knew the bar's history. He'd been there a long time. He had seen the club change multiple hands, undergo different names, so he knew years and years of history of these clubs.
He knew all the dirt.
He experienced much of the paranormal activity that has been reported over the years and was supposedly even possessed at one point, requiring an exorcism.
Did they bring someone in to do the exorcism?
I couldn't find a whole lot of details about that, but there is a book. Carl's story is the basis for a book called Hell's Gate.
Oh,
which
wow.
I guess further details more of that exorcism and his experiences. Now, some paranormal investigators have done some digging around, and they did find there was a real woman named Joanna Reagan that was actually found dead at the location in 1914, but this was before the Primrose opened. So there's no way the story about her father shooting and killing her singer boyfriend, that was actually a true story.
Right, because that woman's death occurred before the Primrose is there.
No, it would have been after the Primrose.
Oh, after the Primrose.
So this woman died before the Primrose was even there.
Right.
So this was it's just the timeline doesn't line up. But there is a real woman named Joanna who died there. So the fact that there are some, ghost associations, I guess, with this name. Like it is like buried in some truth there. But Carl Lawson, I mean, he really was the one who made this paranormal activity at Bobby Mackey's like a known thing. He like put it on the map. But Carl was a known alcoholic and drug user, so many people discredit his stories.
See, I hate that. You know, people always assume if you're an alcoholic or a avid drug user that everything you say is a lie.
Yeah, but you also have to think if someone's a drug user and they are seeing apparitions, that could just be hallucinations, Dylan.
Well, it depends on the drug.
Well, yeah.
I'm a purist.
Still.
Hey, if you're snorting coke, dude, you're not seeing ghosts and shit.
There are tunnels underneath Bobby Mackey's Music World. Some of them connect to that well room where the slaughterhouse had, stood. They had the well.
Yeah, it's like a blood and gut drain.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So there are tunnels, and you can actually go. I mean, I wouldn't suggest going there and trying to tunnel to the basement, but there are tunnels leading out.
That's pretty wild. Yeah, I mean, it was fair. It was soundly boarded up and didn't appear to be much use of any kind of the property.
I don't know if that place is still open. They did have some signs up about paranormal tours with a phone number you could call. So I'm not sure if Bobby Mackey's is even still like up and running. I guess I should have found that out before we started the story. But
yeah, it looked defunct.
It looked a little boarded up.
Yeah, it looked like no one's doing anything there.
Of course, it could have just been due to COVID.
Well, that's true.
They actually do exist, as I mentioned, these tunnels, but people speculate they were more likely for drainage than for secret, dark deeds.
Well, that's not to say that for whatever reason the tunnels were constructed, it would be a perfect place to do some of that stuff if someone was to find it.
Well, as I mentioned, that in the 1920s it was a speakeasy and that there had been several people killed at that club and their bodies were taken other places. So there is a lot of stories out there that those tunnels were used to move the dead bodies out.
Okay. Well, and where that sits, and there's a lot of industrial types of areas and very near it. So it wouldn't be hard, and they've been that way for, decades, you can tell. It wouldn't be that hard to throw someone in the back of an old pickup or something, go dump them out by the river down the road, right?
Yeah.
Ooh.
I always think that the thought of secret tunnels is really creepy.
Tunnels are creepy.
You think tunnels are creepy?
Even like the nicest, most well-funded tunnels, which are typically in other countries, not America nowadays. Just the idea of being in a tunnel, one way in, one way out, that creeps me out. Let alone if you're below like a bay, under a bay or something, and there's all this water and shit above you.
Even just tunnels in and out of restaurants. I know that there was a restaurant that I visited in Savannah that has these underground tunnels supposedly used by pirates back in the day.
Oh, no.
And the staff would talk about the tunnels being really creepy and haunted. And I don't know, it just creeps me out. But I guess I'm claustrophobic and I don't want to go in an underground tunnel.
Well, there's that element. And you're in, and the acoustics are going to be odd in a tunnel. And all these, which I think a lot... I'm not saying there is nothing out there that can't be explained, but a lot of it is just our own senses giving us feedback visually, auditorily. See what I did there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can taste it and smell. No, I'm just saying a lot of that's just our minds playing tricks on us.
All right. Our next story, just off the Switchback Railroad Trail in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and this is a part of the Appalachian Trail, stands the old Carbon County Jail, which is now a museum. In the 1870s, it was the infamous execution site for 7 Irish coal miners known as the Molly Maguires. They were accused of, and many think falsely, murdering mine owners during a union dispute.
Yeah, well, those labor disputes got really rough back in the day.
I was actually thinking we should cover the Molly Maguires because it's a very interesting story on another episode of Offbeat, do a deep dive into the Molly Maguires. What do you think, Dylan? It's up your alley.
Oh, yeah, I would be all about that labor dispute.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, wow. I bet our listeners are like, wow, can't wait for that one, Dylan.
Well, you like history stuff. And it's a part of Appalachian history. So the men were hanged, and legend is that one of the men named Thomas Fisher put his hand to the dirt floor of the jail and then placed it on the wall, saying, "This hand will remain as proof of my innocence."
That's very interesting.
The handprint is still visible today for those who want to check out the museum. It has supposedly been washed, painted over, and they even tried to take down part of the wall and replaster it, and then the handprint showed back up.
Okay, so that's a really great story if any of that's true, because I was wondering how this dirty handprint had made it throughout the ages just from simple maintenance and upkeep. So they've actually tried to get rid of the handprint.
Keeps coming back.
Always comes back.
Yeah.
All right.
So apparently Thomas Fisher was innocent.
I see the correlation.
So I thought that was kind of weird and creepy, right?
Strange.
Yeah. Our next ghost story, Dylan, takes place in Pennsylvania, Dead Man's Hollow.
Ooh, that sounds like somewhere I'd like to visit.
It is located near the Great Allegheny Passage in Pennsylvania. It is a 450-acre tract of park space. There are at least 8 myths about Dead Man's Hollow. Some of the lore ranges from a spirit who was wrongly convicted and hanged for murder, that there's a 40-foot snake that slivers through the area, and they described him as having the girth of a top hat.
Jesus,
that sounds like my fucking nightmare.
That's a full-blown anaconda.
Yeah, it's like a cryptid snake that lives in the area. And there's even a more ancient tale about a group of young boys who found a body hanging from a tree in the woods. So during the 1800s, the area served as a quarry. Then it became the home of a pipe factory in the early part of the 20th century. Some of the remnants of the old factory buildings still remain today. There are 8 miles of trails that wind around, including an area where you find an abandoned staircase. And a lot of folks have experienced paranormal activity around this particular staircase. In 1880, a man named George Mcclure was shot to death in the hollow. His murderer was a man named Ward McConkey.
Ooh, old man McConkey.
Actually, wasn't old at all. He was like 19, I think. Yeah.
I'm just going to say old man McConkey.
Well, McConkey was executed in 1883, and he denied having any involvement in this murder. 19-year-old Ward is said to have returned and haunts the hollow. The hollow is located by the Toccoa River.
I bet you said that perfectly.
Probably did not. Someone in Pittsburgh is yelling at me right now. And people have drowned there. You know, it's a river. Clearly, you know, it's going to happen. But reportedly, people say they experience the feeling of spirits pulling them under the water when they're swimming in this river.
You know what I find interesting a lot of the times with ghost stories, not just in Appalachia, it's like someone was wrongfully accused or died because of the negligence of someone else, which is kind of makes them like this kind of martyr figure. And it's almost like people use that as to why they would be haunting this house or a particular piece of land. I find that interesting.
Well, they may be dead, but they got a bone to pick.
Yeah, I think that's a driving force of a lot of these stories.
I'm very stubborn, and I will hold a grudge till the end of time. So if I was wrongly accused of something, you can damn well guarantee I would come back and I would fuck with people.
Well, I know you would.
I'm very stubborn.
Because in your living life, in your living form, you can operate on coffee and spot.
Yes.
It can carry you for weeks.
Yeah.
So I would have no doubt in my mind.
You'd think I would be skinnier at this point.
No doubt. And some treats, some snacks. But I would have no doubt in my mind that in your ethereal form.
My afterlife.
Yes. That you would, and once you have all these other tools and powers, right? I mean, because ghosts are pretty cool, right? That you would definitely use those to fuck with people.
How dare you cut me off in traffic back in 1996?
You're like, I don't even remember.
Hiding in the closet like boogity boo.
Oh, I finally figured it out. It was that crazy-ass blue-haired lady that chased me for 6 miles because I cut her off.
Yeah, that would be me.
And instead of throwing my hand up in apology, I flipped her off and I said, sit on it. And then she followed me for 6 miles. And now apparently she's died in some horrible accident. And I'm being haunted for some traffic infraction.
Yeah.
That I don't recall.
That seems very plausible. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, Heather.
Well, reportedly, spirits pull those people underwater. Swimmers in that area have experienced this type of thing. Hikers and hunters recall seeing shadowy figures in the distance, as well as disembodied voices and strange smells wafting through the air.
Oh, wow.
I mean, maybe a raccoon just farted.
Maybe it's that 40-foot snake.
God, snake-ass snake. Others say the hollow had a history of dark tales, criminal acts, and untimely deaths over the years. But that the hollow has been used because it's this big open like park space that a lot of people have gone there to conduct their dirty deeds.
So
drug deals, that kind of thing.
This is where AC/DC went to develop their business model.
They were, yes.
For the dirty deeds done dirt cheap.
They were like, we're going to do these things dirt cheap. We got to map it out.
They had a full-on...
We're never going to get a loan from the bank if we don't have a proper business plan.
A full-on board of directors, and they're bouncing things off each other, spitballing, had a whiteboard out there in the field.
Yes.
Cool.
How'd you know?
And
you've heard the story before.
They came to the realization that the only way to make dirty deeds profitable was to do them dirt cheap. And see, that right there was the magic of their business model.
This is true, Dylan.
Because people want dirty deeds done, typically aren't going to pay a lot for them.
And, well, they do sometimes, and then they find out it's an undercover cop.
That's what, if you go on the cheap side, you undersell, and then that way you just get some piece of shit who's willing to do this dirty deed for you.
Shitbird. Yeah,
a shitbird.
Exactly. Our next story takes place in Louisville, Kentucky. There is a wooded area known as Iroquois Park. The area has twisted trails, perfect for mountain biking, hiking, walking, a lot of recreation happening there. In the 1800s, a settler and his wife were living in the area. The wife was left home alone when there was an attack by natives. She was killed, beheaded, and then the cabin was burned to the ground. People say a thick fog will cover the area out of nowhere, and the trail begins smelling of smoke as if something is burning nearby.
Oh, wow.
The woman is reported often seen walking out of the fog, wearing clothing from the 1800s, covered in blood, and people have seen her also carrying her severed head.
Okay. What would you do? What would you do if you seen an apparition carrying its own severed head?
Okay, well, I think the question that we really have to begin with, Dylan, is am I high or am I not high when this happens?
Yes, and what I said, going back to what I said earlier, what drug did I take, and can these side effects be what I'm experiencing now?
Now, did I have like 40 milligrams of an edible? I might see a ghost carrying a severed head.
Can I say that could possibly produce hallucinogenic qualities in your mind?
Did I pop a few mushrooms? I mean, these are the questions, right?
Oh, God.
Now, if I'm just a straight Heather and I see a spirit carrying a severed head, I am probably going to run like the wind.
Okay.
Like the song.
I think that's a good answer.
It is the night, my body's weak. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. What about you?
I would shit my pants in the same sober Dylan state of mind. I would shit my pants, and then I would, or what is it saying? I would shit and fall back in it.
You would shit and fall back in it?
Yup.
I would run like the wind, and I would immediately call the Ghostbusters.
I would just lay there on the ground screaming, no, no, and not trying to actually get away like in some old cheesy horror movie.
What if she takes her severed head and she rolls it at you like a bowling ball and like knocks your ass down?
Oh, dude.
And yells, strike.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I say I would be so scared and screaming, but at the same time I kind of chuckle because that would be such a great scene. Great trope.
Very cool, huh? Okay, our next story takes place in the mountain town of Toccoa, Georgia, located in Stevens County. It is in the far northeast corner of the state. It was established in the late 1800s along with the Georgia Airline Railroad. So a little town popped up there after the railroad came into the area. Currahee Mountain rises outside of town and was known as a military training ground during World War II. So if you watch the series Band of Brothers, then you're familiar with Currahee. 3 miles up, 3 miles down. The David Schwimmer character, that lieutenant, would make the airborne guys run up and down Currahee, like constantly.
Oh, he was such an ass.
And he was such an ass. Yeah. So that was like a big part of the movie. So a lot of people are familiar with this area if you watch that. Well, it's not really a movie. It's like a docuseries or like not a docuseries.
It's a miniseries.
A miniseries.
Jesus Christ.
I know. I'm sorry.
Spit it out.
Yeah, well. So this museum was created to commemorate the rich history of the area, especially the association with World War II. Since the opening, the museum workers have reported a series of strange sounds, ghosts on the property, including men dressed in World War II uniforms, and items being moved around this museum. Visitors have felt tugs on their camera straps. Others have felt tingling sensations while they're visiting certain areas of the museum, and many have reported feeling this intense pain in their left arm.
Oh, wow.
Which is very strange, right?
Well, yeah, that would be scary. See, all these things I feel like could be associated with energy, an energy buildup of or release of some type.
You think so?
Yeah, and that's what I really think. We're all just energy, and there's different planes and forms of energy. And it's to be said that all energy never goes away, matter. It's all been created, it's all exists, and it just changes different forms. I think that's a smart way to put it. And so it's not like when a body dies, that doesn't go away, it just changes into another form. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
Do you really?
So do you think these World War II soldiers, that their energy was just left there at this training spot?
Well, I think in a lot of these cases, what you describe with asylums, hospitals,
maybe running Currahee Mountain was such a damn task.
Yeah.
That it left a mark on them in life, and then after death, they're still there running up that goddamn mountain.
Well, it's almost like these places absorb the energy for whatever reason, and that's why you have these ominous feelings or these different various feelings when you go there. You can just feel it because we're just tuning forks.
It's true, like Gettysburg.
Any of the places,
There's a lot of people who describe these feelings when they're visiting a place like Gettysburg.
Well, I mean, you had such a human calamity happen there, such a big event that, I mean, how could it not have absorbed some of that? Interesting.
Our next story takes place in Virginia, in Mack's Meadows. There is the Major Graham Mansion, which was built in 1826 by Squire David Graham, a prominent figure in Wyatt County in the iron industry. He bought 2,000 acres of land from the Crockett family. In the 1700s, the property was owned by a man named Joseph Baker, who was murdered by 2 slaves. The slaves were only known as Bob and Sam, and they took an axe to Baker's skull, then submerged his remains in a barrel of moonshine.
Oh, man.
Can you think of anything more Appalachian than that?
They messed up a perfectly good barrel of moonshine.
Maybe it tasted better.
Oh, they called it that blood jug.
Maybe the blood jug was good. Graham's estate, which he called Cedar Run, was designed with barns, slave quarters, iron forges, and a huge, sprawling 11,000 square foot antebellum mansion.
Well, that's huge.
That's a big-ass house, right? His firstborn son, David Graham, would later become a Civil War major. In the 1860s, young Graham spent his time involved in the Confederate Army. After 3 years of serving in the Confederacy, he returned home to the family's iron business. He resumed building on the property, installing dormers, towers, elaborate furnishings, along with constructing various fish ponds and brick walking paths around the property. Soon after, many on the estate started experiencing ghosts of soldiers roaming the property. And in one new room that they built on the house, they actually called it the Confederate Room because so many ghostly Confederate spirits began popping up in this newly constructed room.
Oh, wow.
Crazy, huh? One of the ghosts also seen in the home is that of Clara. She was a slave girl that David's younger sister, Betty, had started tutoring in secret in one of the mansion's bedrooms. When Clara died of an illness, Betty wrapped her student's body and stowed it in this makeshift classroom/bedroom.
So when she died, they stored her body in there? Or
Betty did.
Kind of had the viewing, maybe?
I guess. So her ghost continues to haunt the mansion. Martha Graham was David Sr.'s wife, so it would be the Major's mother. She suffered from lifelong, depression, and her ghost haunts the mansion. In her fits of madness, she would be locked away in her bedroom, and it became like a prison cell for her. Her signature and initials are often etched into the window.
Ooh, that's scary.
And there are other scribbles that have been found in the basement, supposedly where she's like written her name or just scribbles in the dirt and the dust.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to live in or around something that's very, very old.
In the 1940s, an eccentric law professor moved into the house. His name was Reed Fulton, and he had a thing for eating buzzard eggs.
How do you even come by buzzard eggs?
I don't know, but he supposedly haunts the house, and the smell of stinky eggs, these buzzard eggs, apparently smell terrible. And you can smell those buzzard eggs, like, throughout the home. There is also a ghostly weeping bride in a white long veil who appears in a bedroom window.
I don't know how you get it. You know the buzzards in the carrion, they smell. They stink because they eat dead things all the time.
Yeah, what's up with that? Why would you want to eat a buzzard egg? Like, that just seems like the grossest thing ever to me.
Yes, it does.
Like, what is up with that? Okay, our next story comes to us via, let's see here, I lost my space, Dylan. Don't be mad at me.
Don't add her, guys, and tell her she's shit.
It is located in Appalachia at Lake Shawnee Amusement Park in Rock, West Virginia, considered one of the most haunted locations in the Appalachias. So early settlers, the Clay family, moved to this property, and it resulted in a bloody clash between them and Native Americans. The entire family was essentially wiped out. In 1926, an amusement park was opened on this land, catering to coal miners and their families. During the park's heyday, 2 children were killed, 1 child drowned in a swimming pond, and another was killed in a swing accident. In total, 6 people died at the park while it was in operation. So by 1966, the park was closed. The steel and wood amusement rides were left behind, including a Ferris wheel, swings. You get the idea. It passed through several hands over the years. Many stories of hauntings and vengeful ghosts have been reported on the property. In the 1980s, a man named Gaylord White bought the property, but soon realized, once they started excavating it, that the site was a Native American burial ground. They found lots of children's bones and artifacts.
And that is never a good sign.
So now the park hosts a dark carnival in the October month, complete with haunted trail, corn maze, creepy clowns.
Yeah, when you discover these burial grounds and things, I think you should try to put them back intact best as possible. And leave them be. Maybe you don't have making an attraction. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Do you disagree with what I'm saying?
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's just a respect to people's remains. I mean, I don't necessarily think that there's any direct connection. I think, whatever energy or something associated with the humans already left and went to somewhere else, changed, if you will. But I mean, I don't know. It's kind of gross. What do you think?
Well, the White family, they had plans to build residential, maybe apartment building, that kind of thing there, but they've left it alone.
So they basically have tried not to change the land.
They've done nothing there. They haven't pursued any kind of development on the land. All of the rides, everything from the amusement park still remain, so they just have this big chunk of land.
Okay.
And they know that dark tourism is a thing. People want to visit the park. They do paranormal tours. They do this dark carnival in October. I guess I see it as well. In one way, maybe it could be disrespectful, but 2, I kind of like going to haunted attractions.
Well, I do too, and I'm not saying that anyone.
Plus, you got to figure, Dylan, they have to have a way to pay the property taxes.
Yeah,
they own all the acreage,
and they have not just come in there and cut the trim, developed the whole thing, dug everything up. And so, yeah, I guess they're doing maybe one of the more respectful routes they could take. So maybe I take that back.
You can go during the dark carnival and buy, if you don't want to actually just go to the haunted types of things, they sell tickets for a photography tour. Well, they'll take you around the property. Photographers can get out their equipment, shoot images of these, old abandoned Ferris wheels and that kind of thing, which is cool.
That is cool.
Right? So before the park closed permanently, Visitors would say they felt someone grabbing at their feet in the swimming ponds, often trying to pull them under. Some believe the land itself is cursed. A little girl in a dress can be seen walking around the park, as well as spirits who seem to be riding the now defunct Ferris wheel.
Yes, and it was also said that a Russian blue cat named Churchill was buried there and came back from the dead. And he was very evil because he brought something back with him. Wait, is that Pet Cemetery? Oh, never mind. That was a movie. I thought it was part of the story.
Okay, are you ready for our next ghost story, Dylan?
Yep.
Gatlinburg, Tennessee hosts one of the most famous ghosts in the Smoky Mountains. Known as the Greenbrier Restaurant, it was once a lodge that opened in 1939. A young woman named Lydia lived at the lodge and was jilted by her lover. The two were to be married at a Gatlinburg church. He didn't show up. She rushed back to Greenbrier Lodge and hung herself, and she was still wearing her wedding dress when she was discovered. Her fiancé's body was found days later, mangled by a mountain lion or a bobcat.
Oh, damn, what's the odds of that?
Now, some people believe that he had been killed before the wedding. So she was believing he stood her up and then hung herself.
Oh, okay.
All heartbroken. And some people think that he was killed before that even happened, so he didn't stand her up.
And that's why he didn't show up.
And then others say it's Lydia's vengeful spirit who got him. Diners at the restaurant have seen a very sad-looking woman on the staircase, which is where she'd hung herself, or they simply feel a deeply forlorn presence come over them while dining in the restaurant.
Yeah, that'd really ruin your breakfast, right?
Right. I mean, I just want to sit there and eat my steak. I don't want to feel sad while I'm doing it.
I'm just trying to have a mimosa and some eggs,
These
guys.
are some really good mashed potatoes. You just start crying.
It's not your fault. It's the forlorn presence from the stairway.
Now, this is a good one. This is in our last story, and it's in Sevierville, Tennessee. Wheatland's Plantation, located in Sevierville, has a rich history. It has seen both the Revolutionary and Civil Wars, as well as the carnage from the Battle of Boyd's Creek. Cherokees, supported by the British, fought John Sevier and other East Tennessee revolutionaries at this Battle of Boyd's Creek. 28 Cherokee who died at the battle were buried in a mass grave on Wheatland's property. The house itself has witnessed 70 murders and deaths.
Wow, that's a lot.
There are 69 African-American slaves buried on the property, as well as 2 Revolutionary War soldiers. A bloodstain on the living room floor still remains and is a reminder of a father murdered by his son some years ago. Many spectators are said to... Specters.
They just sit around looking at me.
You can tell I'm having like a goofy day.
It's so scary. They're looking at me with binoculars and stuff like they expect me to do something.
Okay, I'm corrected. Specters are said to be roaming the halls of the home, but also the property in general. So the property is located by the French Broad River, and it was used to ship barrels of wheat whiskey to New Orleans.
Wheat whiskey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want a glass of that.
Visitors have heard the screams of men. They hear thuds. Gurgling noises is one of the most disturbing things that people have reported.
Yes, that would be super scary.
Spirits of slave children have been seen like running around the property, playing with one another. And a young girl in a blue dress is often seen running up the staircase. Shadows appear out of nowhere, as well as objects will be removed or moved like around the home with no explanation. The graves that are located on the property, people have heard voices, screams, very weird noises around these graves. Some say that the original owner, Thomas Childers, was a Freemason who built the house on top of a giant geode, which is known for electromagnetic capabilities and is said to feed spirit energy.
Oh man, it could be on top of a convergence of some ley lines. Ooh, yeah.
So one thing about these plantation houses, in my opinion, is that these structures need to be there to provide us with a teachable lesson about our country's past mistakes. And it's easy to see, in my opinion, how some of these plantation houses could be incredibly haunted because of the horrors that went on there.
Just any place that there's this amount of extended human suffering and mournful, just soul-wrenching things atrocities that happened, I think that is yet again a perfect place for energy to gather and be absorbed into the existing land and structures. But yeah, you can't, I don't agree with just raising it all down and out of our, line of sight and never thinking about it again, because that's definitely the wrong way to approach your history. It's not going to be perfect. You're not going to agree with all of it. Some of it's going to be horrible. But then you got to look at the good in our history that's come along from and, during some of these horrible times. The people that stood up, the people who weren't scared to voice
the abolitionists,
what wasn't popular, no matter the situation. It takes a lot of guts to do that when all your friends, family, and neighbors or totally disagree with you to the point where they would shoot you or something.
Right. I could just definitely see how some of these plantation houses, like the Myrtles in Louisiana, considered like incredibly haunted. There's got to be a lot of bad energy associated with those places because of the cruelty, the way people were treated. They're just horrible.
Yup. Yeah, so is that your last little story?
That was my last story, Dylan.
That was some good...
Okay, guys, I want to apologize. We are recording on a brand new laptop, and I didn't have my notifications turned off, and so every single email that's come through has been popping up, and I'm sorry if you've been hearing a buzz, like, little pops and buzzes. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, you know us, the DIY. It takes us a moment to adjust. When we do have to adjust, we do hope that the audio is an improvement upon what we were just using. It seems to be to us. So if you'll let us know, hit us up at mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. If it sounds okay, sounds better, worse, let us know. We're always trying to make it better, a better experience for the listener.
If you would like to check out our patreon.com, Mountain Murders Podcast, there's a lot of exclusive bonus content there. You'll get an ad-free experience, and you can join us in our I can't talk today. In our Discord chat and have direct contact with us. Dylan's up all the time at work, all hours of the night, so you never know when you might catch Dylan on Discord.
Oh, yeah.
Bullshitting.
Yeah, just shitting and grinning.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, always on there, and we love talking, interacting with our listeners and patrons. So, yeah, we'd like to see you there on Discord on Patreon.
Yeah, so think about joining us on Patreon.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Before we go, one last thing I did find in my travels on the computer there was an abandoned town in West Virginia.
Oh, tell us about it.
It's Thurmond. It's called Thurmond, West Virginia. THURMOND. And it seems to have been like you were describing earlier, one of those little train towns that pops up. And it's been completely abandoned since. And you can go there and have like the entire little town to yourself.
Very cool. We'll have to check that out. I also want to check out that town that's in Pennsylvania, the like Silent Hill town that has like the fire burning underground.
Yes.
That would be weird, right?
Definitely.
Okay, we have all these cool spots we need to visit, Dylan.
Let's do it.
Let's have a haunted road trip summer.
Ooh.
All right, we'll be back on Sunday with another true crime case. Thanks for listening to Mountain Murders Podcast.